Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Evening, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, up to you.
Hi.
Good evening.
Sorry I'm late. I was waiting.
It seemed to take quite a while for you to come through. I don't know why.
No. I was early, I thought.
I thought you were just polishing your chains of office there.
Of course. One does.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Deborah, you'll have to advise me if we're waiting for anyone.
We have two apologies this evening. Councillor Bowen hasn't joined us yet. 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hi, Debbie. Both Debbie's.
Hello.
Deborah.
8, 9.
Hi, Yasmin.
Hello.
Who have we got here? I'm going to have to start writing it down. So we've got Sarah, Rachel, Julie, Jonathan.
Is Caesar here?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
Hi. Yeah. Anybody on the phone?
Yes, Peter.
I am. I'm on my phone as well.
Who's that, please? Are you a member of the public?
I'm Denise.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Warwick. I'm on the phone, even though I did click into the internet.
Okay. Thanks, Warwick. Kevin. Peter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Peter there.
Yes, Peter's here.
So that's 11, 12. 2 missing then.
Yes,
Ollie and
Michael Andrews.
Michael
Anderson.
he's apologised.
Yeah, he sent us apologies.
There should be 14 councillors.
Yeah.
I've just received a message from Ollie Bow and he's trying to connect.
Oh, is he? Okay. So
We've got Andrew as well, haven't we? So
yes, we've got both the Andrews.
I wasn't counting Andrew. So we're 1 missing, which is Ollie. So we're it's just Ollie missing.
Okay.
I think we'll get started, and Ollie will join us when he can. Please keep an eye open for him, knocking on the door, as it were. Is that okay? Should we get started? I apologise that we're 4 minutes late. We will try and start on time in the future, but I think I said that last time. Welcome to the meeting of Newmarket Town Council on this Monday, the 15th of June. This meeting is being recorded. Is anyone else intending to record the meeting? I take that silence to mean no. And so we move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is apologies.
We have apologies from councillors Kirby and Anderson.
Thank you. We now move to the interest part of the meeting, where declaration of members' interests, and to remind councillors of the need to keep up to date with the register of members' interests and to consider any requests received for members' dispensation. Have we received any?
No.
Okay. We now move to the minutes of the Town Council meeting held on Monday, the 1st of June. And first of all, looking at these for accuracy, and I'll go through it page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4.
Yeah.
Yes, Andrew. Sorry, Councillor Appleby.
Yes, all right. The resolution for the neighbourhood plan to be on the 29th of June conflicts with the meeting schedule to be proposed at item 21 tonight. Did we actually agree on the 29th of June? Was this merely a tentative suggestion? Because we've yet to decide the membership, which is probably an agenda item for the next Town Council on the 29th. I would propose that we perhaps amend to the last bit to as soon as practical.
With the date of the first meeting to be as soon as practical.
Yeah.
Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor?
Yeah. That's my proposal, yes.
Julie, have you got that? I'm shouting because I can't see Julie. Julie?
No, she's got her. She can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So what we're doing here is amending the minutes, because in the cycle of meetings, we're suggesting that the neighbourhood plan, the first meeting of the neighbourhood plan committee, should fit into the whole cycle of meetings that we're going to try and get back to. And that will be the 13th of July, I think is the date. Councillor Appleby is proposing it. Welcome, Ollie. Is that seconded, please? Well, I will. Thank you. Councillor O'Neill has seconded. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favour, please show your hands.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And any
Sorry,
against?
What are we voting for? Apologies for being
An
late.
amendment to a resolved item in the last Town Council meeting. The meeting of the neighbourhood plan, we've in fact suggesting it should be the 13th of July, and the minutes said the 29th of June.
Oh, okay.
So just amending that.
Thank you.
Moving on to page 5 and page 6. So can I see, is that someone proposed that that's a correct record? That's Councillor O'Neill. Is that seconded? That's Councillor Caesar. And those in favour, please show your hands now.
Yeah.
And those against. Thank you, that's carried. Going now through for matters arising, and page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Hood. Page 5, is that?
Yeah, this is just in relation to the state of the grass bank at the Queen's statue, which is still looking as if it needs dealing with. It's looking a mess. So
the service level agreement does come up on the agenda, doesn't it? Could we deal with that there? Because I think there are a number of issues. Item 16, Councillor Hood.
yeah, happily, if that's, but I just wanted to raise it because it is specific.
Please bring that up under item 16. That would be excellent. Page 6. Yes, Councillor Lay.
Yes. Under the 14th, let's go to West Suffolk service level agreement. As I understand it, the man from the cemetery used to water the bank by the Queen's statue, and if that was reinstigated, that bank would look much better.
Okay. I think, thank you very much for that information, Councillor Lay. Can you remind us of that when we get to item 16, and we'll add it to the list of complaints about our service level agreement? Would be, I think, an accurate description. I'm on to page 6 of 6, and no more matters arising. we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is a presentation, to receive a presentation from the UNEX group regarding proposals for developing Fitzroy Park and Queensbury Lodge. We've all had the papers and indeed a map, and Mr. Walsh is here. Would you like to speak to us, please?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead then.
Deborah, is it possible to enable the screen sharing function?
Do I have to give you permission?
Apparently.
If I just try that and see if that works. Not.
1 second, bear with me.
So it is saying that all participants should be able to share.
Oh, is it?
Are you now able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll put it on to full screen. Thank you very much for allowing me some time to speak to you tonight about this. I don't think there'll be anybody here who obviously doesn't know the long-running saga of Queensbury Lodge and the site and the unfortunate appearance of the end of the town. And after some years, it finally came about that the site has actually been allocated in West Suffolk Site Allocation Local Plan under the heading of site SA6B. Now I say the site has been allocated. There's one little bit shown on this plan, which if I just point the cursor at it, is there. That wasn't part of the allocation. That currently sits behind the Shell petrol station. It used to be a used car showroom, and UNEX and Shell are in the process of carrying out effectively a land swap. The purpose of that really was instigated by Shell, who wanted to carry out a redevelopment of their site and have far better frontage. Effectively, UNEX are swapping the bulk of what was the former swimming pool site and getting the former car sales site in return. So I just draw that distinction because when I say it's an allocated site, that little bit is actually extra to the allocation. The allocation itself has one key requirement, which is that there has to be a development brief agreed by West Suffolk Council before anything can actually happen. So tonight, what I'm showing you isn't actually a planning application. It's an extract out of development brief which has been submitted to the council. It's actually the second version. We have been dealing with officers at the council for quite a period of time now, and this is now the second iteration of the development brief which has been submitted to them. It's quite a large document. It runs to 73 pages, and it includes things like an analysis of all the relevant policies from national through to local level. It includes contextual site appraisal, an appraisal of the local context of the surrounding streets. It has a conservation area appraisal and also an impact assessment on the listed buildings. What I've shared with you is effectively the paragraphs and sections out of it which talk about what is proposed to go on the site, and this plan, which is the sort of site concept plan. As you can see, obviously, we have got, if I just move the cursor to it, you've got High Street down here. Here's the Queensbury Lodge part of the site. You've got, at this side, Falmouth Avenue, Rowley Drive at the back, and Blackbear Lane coming down side here.
Just talking about the latest plans for Queensbury Lodge at the moment.
And in terms of sort of like key provisions of what it is that we're proposing to show on right here. We have got 123 dwellings, and of those 123 dwellings, 30% as per the policy are affordable. So that effectively breaks down to 86 market houses and 37 affordable houses. The White Lion, which is here, is proposed to be converted for commercial use. Queensbury Lodge is restored and reinstated for a racehorse training starter yard, but this time with a dedicated horse walk going through the land at the back to meet up with the horse walk network on the rows. And then there's effectively public open space and landscaping. So if I slightly home in on, so like different areas, you've got, say on the front here, you've got Queensbury Lodge. So effectively, all the listed buildings are retained and remain as is, except obviously there's extensive restoration work required to them. And the idea is that effectively the house, oh, what have I done now? Dear, oh dear. I shall hold rid of that. Oh no. Right, the house becomes, that was a close one. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Good. The house is effectively the trainer's house and office. The small cottage becomes accommodation for lads, and the stables are refurbished stables, and we have the horse walk put through. Moving to the side, we then have the White Lion shown as converted and refurbished for a sort of commercial use. And part of that idea is that it would be effectively office workplaces, so that people who lived on the estate would have the ability to actually take space there and literally just walk 2 or 3 minutes to their office if they wanted. We've then got our main access off the high street, and then here we've got the new development by Shell, and that will form effectively a separate planning application that Shell will produce. And that's, let's say, primarily on the former swimming pool site. If we then move into the site, what we've done is when we had our sort of like character analysis carried out, and also went down Black Bear Lane and then looked at Falmouth Street and Fitzroy Street and Doris Street, etc., very much the local vernacular was predominantly terraced houses. So we have followed that vernacular style here to try and fit in with the sort of like grain and style of the existing conservation area. So you would come in past the sort of terrace, and then the next bit you'd come to, sorry, I've done that one, effectively having come in this bit, you then arrive at a new landscaped public square, again with terrace houses round about it. And then the next bit is we have the existing avenue of mature trees, and it also crosses over this way to Black Bear Lane. And that area would be retained effectively as a woodland garden. It wouldn't actually form part of anyone's private garden. It would effectively be maintained by a management company so that the trees could be secured and protected, but it would be freely accessible to residents, in fact, local people, because they'll effectively be able to cross through the site as well. And then effectively just going back to the overall scheme, in terms of the numbers of dwellings and why we come up with that particular number, the West Suffolk Council, when they were doing their local plan, one of the documents which they produced is the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment. And what they do is they test the capacity of sites at different densities. So they test it at 20 dwellings a hectare, 30, 40, and 50 dwellings a hectare. And that threw up for this site an overall capacity range of between 71 dwellings and 178 dwellings. What we've come in with is effectively the absolute midpoint, because if you take the midpoint between that range, it's 124 dwellings. So we're at 123, albeit that SLA didn't actually include the little bit of the shell land swap, so we're slightly below the midpoint. And in terms of density, it is obviously a town site. I say the council SLA tested between 20, 30, 40, and 50. Our density averages out about 36 dwellings per hectare. Now, I could probably give you more information on what we've planned, different aspects of it. We could talk about parking numbers, things like that. But I'm also very aware that you have got a busy agenda tonight. This isn't actually a planning application. It is literally the first stage in a process of producing a development brief as a precursor to then preparing a planning application. So I don't know if perhaps you prefer if I stop at that point and I'll allow you to ask any questions, and if hopefully I can ask them, and if not, I'll simply take note and I'll come back to you on them at a later date. The only other thing I would like to ask, if it was at all possible, was I know sometimes if presentations are put to you, all you feel able to do is effectively say, yes, we've had a presentation, that was noted. I don't know if it would be possible, even just as a like rough straw poll at the end, to sort of give us any indication as to whether or not this is the sort of thing you feel down the line if an application came forward like this, is it something you would be able to support? So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Walsh. It's very helpful to have this sort of presentation for what is obviously a very key site in Newmarket. And yes, let's open it out to questions from councillors. I can't see councillors on my screen at the moment. Deborah, are you able to see it, or should we go back to the councillor screen?
I wonder whether it would be simpler if just whoever wished to speak from councillors, whether they just perhaps briefly unmute themselves and just let us know that they want to speak, and then you can call them in turn. But I'm also conscious of the fact that members of the public may wish to speak, and perhaps when we get to that point, they could do something similar. But everybody but yourself, Mr. Walsh, and myself is currently muted.
Okay, so councillors first. Would anyone like to ask a question? Unmute yourself and say yes. We'll try and make a note.
Yes, it's Councillor Diath.
Councillor Diath?
Hi. I just wanted to ask whether any of the residents that will actually be particularly impacted by this have been approached to ask for their views.
Not yet. It is one of these ones that's a slight chicken and egg one. I didn't know whether or not the best thing to do was to canvass the views of the immediately surrounding residents first, and then put in a proposal to West Suffolk to check that we were sort of complying with the policy requirement, not just of the site allocation, but also the development management joint plan, where policy DM4 sets out how the council want a development brief to be prepared. So rightly or wrongly, we sort of took the decision we would submit the development plan to the council formally for pre-application requests, and they've got that just now. They have said that they want to consult, first of all, with English Heritage, and then to set up a sort of video conference call with me to give back feedback. And then at that point, I felt we would sort of know whether or not we were on the right lines and we could go and consult with residents, or whether there was any sort of particular issues that needed to be addressed first and foremost. And so it's something we fully appreciate we need to do, but no, it hasn't actually taken place yet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other councillors wish to ask questions?
Yeah,
Mike, sorry?
Andy Drummond would like to speak, please.
Councillor Drummond. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you,
Drummond.
Mayor. So I was particularly pleased on page 5 of the report in section 8, and the numbering's gone a bit awry. It says 4.7.3, no vehicular access will be permitted from Falmouth Avenue. The existing entrance there will be landscaped with only pedestrian and cycle paths created. Now, this is actually within my ward, and I know some people in Falmouth Avenue were concerned at earlier schemes that there was possible access there. So I'm very pleased for those particular residents to see that that is stopped up. And just in answer to the question that Julie asked, I noticed there's a lady, Sheila Kavanagh, on the call tonight. She contacted me because she lives in the 200 the High Street and was concerned that we were getting into a planning application that the general public didn't know about. And of course, actually, what's actually happened here is we, the town council, are being invited to look at it first and get that information out. So I noticed Alison Hayes, the Journal, picked this up from our agenda, and we actually made front page of the Newmarket Journal with this. So, you know, I would say to the Unix group, well done for putting this into the public domain and looking for some feedback.
Thank you.
Any other councillors have questions or statements? Any members of the public wish to ask any questions?
Sheila Kavanagh, I think, would like to speak. Just bear with me while I unmute her.
I've unmuted myself. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yeah, there are a couple of things. I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbours. We had a really quick conflab about this yesterday because obviously we hadn't seen the drawings. Obviously you can't see what I'm pointing at, but our houses are the ones that are on the diagram that's visible on your screen now. If you go to the bottom, and you can see there's a little row of houses in grey with a little red outline round them. Next to the red lion, and I'm not sure how much to scale these drawings are, so it's hard to gauge quite how close the proposed buildings will be and the road to the end of our gardens.
Could answer, I know you might not be finished, but I could answer that one and then let you continue. If you look at the back of,
my house, yeah.
If you look at the back of the house there,
that's mine.
A direct measurement between that house and the side of this house is 45 meters.
Correct, that's close.
Well, what I was going to say was that is actually slightly further away than the front of your development to the flats on the other side of Newmarket Road.
But it's the garden. It's not. It's yeah. That is extraordinarily closer than the actual road. How close is the road then going to be?
Can you just give me 1 second while I actually measure it? From the back of your property to this edge of the road is about 17 meters. But one of the things that obviously we proposed is that we keep this bit of green separation and then we plant trees along here. And I know on the plan it's just given as indicative, but in the actual text where we talk about what the landscaping is, we've actually specified that these should be heavy standards. I mean, you also know when you can buy trees at all different stages of development, and effectively you can buy things that are called whips that are just almost like the little saplings to plant, or you can buy standards, and they range from like light standard, medium, heavy. And so what we've suggested is that trees that are planted along there should be, mature, heavy standard trees. So immediately it does give additional like screening and separation.
Yeah, because that will then block out all the afternoon lights. That's west. I just want to get the picture clear in my head. I was obviously, yeah, it's significantly closer than I had imagined it would be. As we were told some years ago when the original plans went through for the superstore plan, that the reason that was turned down was because that land was designated for equine use, and so I gather it's not now.
I think that will be tested in the planning application if I'm putting, and I think that's what we've got to understand this evening. This is an outline plan. This is.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time. That's all. I just have these questions on behalf of my neighbours. So,
are you okay now, Sheila? Then.
Yeah. I thank you very much for letting me have a little shout out.
Okay. Any other members of the public wish to speak? I'd like us to move on. In that case, if we could go back to the normal screen, and I think it's reasonable. Mr. Walsh has asked if we could give an indicative vote. And we really must be clear that this is not a planning application. We do have the responsibility to look at the planning application when it arrives with a clear mind. We cannot prejudge that planning application. But I think it's reasonable to say whether we think that this application or this design might meet what we think should go in that particular very important space that we are looking to improve. So I'm going to ask you, if that's all right, anyone wish to comment on what I'm proposing to do? Councillor Hood.
Sorry, I know Bill Gredley, so I'm going to declare a non-pecuniary interest.
Okay, I understand, Councillor Hood. Yeah. Any other comments from councillors before we have an indicative vote? I'm not certain if that's an official term, but what we're saying is, do we like this or don't we like this? It does not prejudge our votes when it comes to a planning application. Councillor Lay. Can we unmute James?
I'll unmute you.
Does James have to unmute himself?
Well, I think he's trying to mute himself and
James.
I'm trying to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, okay. I'm just going to say that we've gone 40 years and wanting something substantial to happen to Queensberry Lodge. And I think in these plans, we have the start of what we've always wanted in Newmarket, which was to tidy up that end of the high street. And to that end, I would give it my support wholeheartedly, believing that further along the line, we will actually look at a planning application, which will crystallize these thoughts into something that is realistic for that end of the town. So I'm proposing that we have a show of hands to indicate how we feel as a council.
Thank you, James. Anyone else wish to speak?
I know Bill quite well too, so I won't vote.
So it's okay. It's two interests. Anyone else wish to speak? I just would like to say I am quite impressed with this design, and what I particularly like are the number of trees, and you're talking about having quite mature trees in the planting, and I hope that that stays throughout the whole process, because for me that is the key to the success of this scheme. Brilliant. So anyone else wish to say anything? Because what I'm going to ask you to do is put your hands up if you think that this is a development that we should we think it is good for Newmarket, if I could put it like that. All right, put your hands now. Deborah, you count the hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
And we've got two abstentions, and then Councillor Holbert.
Yes, I think yeah, that apart from the abstentions, that's everybody's voted in favour.
Okay, is that okay, Mr. Walsh?
Thank you very much indeed. I do appreciate that.
Thank you for your presentation.
Would it-
please? Could you tell me?
Sorry, so just to answer Councillor Holbert, there were 11 votes in favour, 12 votes in favour and 2 abstentions.
And that was it?
Yes.
Yeah, right, okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Walsh, carry on.
I was just going to say, would it be frightfully rude if I was to leave the meeting now?
I think that's very understandable.
Thank you.
We will try and enjoy the evening without you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, we'll now move on to public participation. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, please.
And can you say your name? I couldn't see who that was.
Ian Young. Sorry,
Ian.
I'll turn the camera on.
Okay, anyone, before you go speak, Ian, I'll just find out if there's anyone else wish to speak.
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Okay, Douglas, you'll be second.
Thanks.
Sorry, Deborah, it's Mrs. Poultry.
And anyone else?
I haven't seen.
Sorry?
Not on the phone.
The third person who wishes to speak is Sarah Beckett, and I have her words, and I will read them out. So she has a short statement, which I will read after our 2 contributions. So I don't believe any other members of the public wish to speak. So can I turn to you, Ian? Can I remind you have 3 minutes to speak?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
And if you'd like to speak now.
Okay, I'll cut it down very, very quickly. Great thanks to all the employees, councillors and volunteers especially, who have done such a fantastic job over the last 3 months. The Finance and Planning Working Party meeting held on the 11th of May. After watching the meeting, I was appalled by the behaviour of the then town mayor during the meeting. It clearly shows she went into that meeting with a closed mind, the sole purpose being of undermining the whole process. It appeared to me that she was more concerned with protocols than actually achieving anything anything, even after it was explained to her on several occasions that it was agreed during a full council meeting in May to enable the council to deal with urgent matters more quickly during the crisis. The meeting that she chaired and later claimed to not fully understand what they had actually passed. But she was the chair at the time and put the matter to the vote to the council and declared it passed. Over 17 minutes of councillors' time was wasted while she was on her crusade to undermine and control proceedings at that meeting. When it came to the process of voting, please could you explain to me when exactly she was elected to represent the wards of Councillor Lay and Drummond, St Mary's ward? Can Councillors Lay and Drummond not speak for themselves or even vote for that matter? Why she even objected to the voting process for them? Councillor Lay could quite clearly be seen raising his hand to abstain during the video, but then Councillor Hood tells the chairman that herself, Councillor Drummond and Councillor Lay are not voting and made a statement regarding it not being a properly convened meeting. This was after further delaying tactics, claiming to have not had a full meeting agenda pack. When did a councillor get the right to vote on block or make decisions in a meeting for other councillors? If I lived in St Mary's ward, I would be extremely upset that Councillor Hood is representing my ward and not my elected councillors, Lay and Drummond. It is clear that all 3 councillors went into that meeting with a closed mind after some sort of discussion of what their actions would be prior to the meeting. Councillor Hood doing so without the full facts. She claimed to have an incorrect agenda pack, and all 3 subsequently did not wish to be proactive in any debate regarding the coronavirus crisis under the terms of that meeting, which had the authority of a full council. It begs the question, if they can go into a meeting with a closed mind then, do they collude prior to other meetings, especially important planning meetings prior to them taking place? How can you ensure they don't? From what I witnessed that night, it doesn't inspire confidence in me that they don't. The attitude and behaviour of the mayor at that meeting was quite frankly disgraceful. And that's Rachel Hood, by the way. She was the mayor at the time. From start to finish, the way she spoke, her body language and her whole persona, after not being elected as chair, quite clearly show it was quite clear her sole objective was to get the meeting cancelled or just make it as unworkable for others in attendance as possible. Thankfully, it failed. This is not something that I, or no doubt, other members of the council or the public would expect from any councillor, let alone a councillor with her experience and one holding such a high office at the time on Newmarket Council.
Okay,
Councillor Hood.
stop you there, Ian.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
I'll put it in correspondence because I want to make my point.
Okay. I don't think we need any discussion at this point. We have got working groups coming up on the agenda.
Yes, I mean, obviously I will respond under the agenda, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again, Ian. Douglas, would you like to speak for 3 minutes, please?
Yes, or less. First of all, I got some news this afternoon that the volunteers have been allowed to have permits for parking in town when doing volunteering duties. So I'd like to thank the town council manager, the acting town council manager, for her work, for her help with that. And on that, I see you've got parking on the agenda later this evening, and I just wanted to make the point that the whole timing and publicity around the reintroduction of parking charges and parking enforcement seems to have been handled particularly badly. So back in March, I spoke at Newmarket Town Council about this because I could foresee the issues that were coming up with the coronavirus. Then, you know, I'm sure it had nothing to do with my words, but the district council then did suspend parking charges. And in their press release in March, they said that they were suspending parking enforcement. So it would have been nice to have had some notice for the streets that were targeted last week that enforcement was going to be coming back. The people, the streets, many of the streets that have been targeted with parking enforcement and been ticketed are people that you know, might be furloughed or laid off, working from home, or, you know, maybe not particularly well off at the moment, given what's going on, and to slap someone with a fine. I know that parking enforcement was due to come in, so, but it would have been, you know, perhaps nice to have warned residents that that was about to happen. Then parking enforcement comes in place. The parking charges are introduced on the very day that one of the car parks close to a lot of residents has been, a lot of it has been closed off for repair work. I know some residents have wanted to have a parking permit scheme, and I know that was discussed at a town council meeting a while back, but and I saw some residents actually saying that they've tried to do this and feasibility studies have been done, but nothing's happened. So there seems to be a bit of a reluctance to do something along those lines. And maybe the town council and the district councillors could look at or lobby for, there's some areas that our parking enforcement is from 8 AM or 9 AM to 6 PM, which seems unnecessarily long. On streets with single yellow lines around that area, but I think it's an area that probably needs some further discussion as you're hitting the you know, people that can ill afford it the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. As you quite rightly say, parking is on the agenda, so those points will be taken into consideration. So just finishing off the public participation, Sarah Beckett asked me to read this. Please could you make councillors aware that the new Neighbourhood Plan Committee has already been scheduled without perhaps consideration that non-councillors might like to be part of the committee and should be given the opportunity to do. I would also like to see councillor members have the right to vote, especially as there would be no resolutions to spend. When considering the Newmarket Neighbourhood Plan document, it will need to be addressed how A, the policies will be highlighted and discussed against the relevant planning applications, and B, how the community actions will be taken forward. The view of the Planning Authority in relation to the recent McDonald's Costa Coffee application was disappointing, and they seem to have their own way of interpreting the policies of the Newmarket Neighbourhood Plan. So when making a representation to a planning application, it will not be enough to just quote the policy number, a narrative is needed to explain. The narrative has to be considered carefully within the context of the Newmarket Neighbourhood Plan, and the resolution must be clear, which perhaps was not the case for the McDonald's application. So again, that does come up in terms of our meeting schedule, and that concludes our public participation. And thank you, I hadn't said before, but a very great welcome to all the members of the public, and indeed to the press as well. Welcome to our meeting. So we now move to item 7, which is to consider our committee meetings. And I call on Councillor Caesar to present the recommendations from the Development and Planning meeting.
I hereby present the minutes of the, sorry, I'm not on mute, am I?
No.
I hereby present the minutes of the Development and Planning Committee meeting held on the 8th of June and seek their adoption.
Okay.
That will be found under item 7. I don't believe there are any recommendations to full council.
That, I agree with that. I couldn't see any recommendations. So just about accepting the minutes. Councillor Caesar's proposed it. Is that seconded? Yep. Thank you. All those in favour, please. And anyone against? I think that's carried. Moving on to the Human Resources Committee, there are a couple of items from this that we need to bring back to you, and so we will do that in the confidential part of the meeting. But Councillor O'Neill, can you please present the public part of the Human Resources Committee?
I certainly can, thank you. I'd like to present the public part of the Human Resources Committee minutes and seek their adoption. I don't believe there's any recommendations in the public part.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Neill. That's been proposed by Councillor O'Neill. Is that seconded? Thank you. All those in favour, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone against? Okay, now going on to the coronavirus response, and this is to note the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of June, and I will present those. There are only to be noted, and I propose that they be noted. Are there any questions on those? Once again, I will thank all councillors, all people who have organisations that have helped us on the helpline, and of course the volunteers who actually carry out the requests. It's a wondrous accomplishment by so many people. Can I propose that these be noted? Is that seconded? All those in favour, please. Thank you. Any against? None against. We need to look at the coronavirus financial update. And Kathy, have you got anything to say on these?
Hi, no, there's nothing more to add than what is on there.
Okay.
Other than obviously we're still underneath the amount of funds that we have allocated for it at this point.
Thank you. Any questions to Kathy, please? Okay, I propose that we receive those. Is that seconded? Okay, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Any against? Moving on to finance, to consider the income and expenditure for all committees for May. And those have again have been presented to us. Kathy, anything you wish to point out to us?
Okay, we'll just go down just some brief things to point out for some of the bigger figures down the current month, which is the first column. £500 postage, that's the franking credit that we needed. Office maintenance, we've got £700 there. That's to do with our printing costs and the lease as well of the printer. You can see the £3,000 grant to the Citizens Advice Bureau. That is in that first column there. That's now paid up. And obviously the grant for the Newmarket Festival, which was actually put through last month, but because I had to make an adjustment to put it into the right area, the right nominal code, it has to come up. It will come up, and there'll be an associated credit from the coronavirus cost, which is where it was posted to first. Over the page there, you can see there's the coronavirus response costs at the moment. And the reason it's in negative for this month is because of that transfer of £5,000. You can see the actual year to date, that's from the beginning of April at the moment, is 4,158. There are other committees. I'm just looking down to see if there's anything. I would say at community services, if you look down to the bottom of the first page under repairs and maintenance and grounds for the cemetery, you can see that's the last part of the flint wall repairs for this year. So you've got your total there of 14,700 at the moment. Carrying on. Really anything of any further significance I don't need to point out. If anybody's got any questions for me.
Okay. So any councillors have questions about the finance report? Okay, I think a stunned silence. Well done, Kathy. You've silenced everyone. So we do need to note these. So I propose that we note them. Is that seconded? Okay, can you put your hand up to show that you agree with noting these? Thank you. Anyone against? No one against. Okay. So we move on to item 11. And we had Ian Young speaking to us about a particular working group meeting of the Finance and Policy Working Group meeting. This item is a wider, and if Councillor, I'll just speak at the beginning because I think there's a lot of benefits to working groups, and if we've had some difficulty recently, I would hope that they can be put into context. So I'll speak first, if that's all right, Councillor Hood. Then I'll ask you to answer the criticisms that Ian Young made, if you wish to, and then hopefully we can move forward. So I do see working groups as quite a key feature of this council, and I would like to encourage working groups, but I see them in a very limited role. They should be, for instance, very much task and finish groups, a particular task which is taken to a finish. The recommendations from those task and finish groups would then go to committee or to full council. In other words, a working group would have no delegated powers. They could not decide things. They can only make recommendations to committees or full council. And the reason I'm particularly keen on working groups is that it is a way of using the strengths and talents of individual councillors and a vehicle for ideas. In other words, it's very difficult to have discussions in ordinary meetings, but you can have a full and frank discussions in working groups and then put the conclusions to a committee, when, of course, it is then open to the public. And of course, this isn't anything particularly new. It's not revolutionary. We've had them in the past to organise events, and more recently, we've had them to look at traffic issues in All Saints, and also the litter working group. And I'm sure there are many other instances where we've had working groups. I agree that it's important that we understand what the terms of references are, and that has to be decided by committee, which of course would be a recommendation to council. So that's the way I look at it, and I hope we can use them profitably and to make the council work better. Councillor Hood, would you like to comment?
Yes, I would. I'm very used to Ian Young's interest in various things that I do in my council life, so life wouldn't be quite the same if I didn't have Ian complaining about me, but that's fine. As far as the actual substance of what happened at that working group is concerned, having been given the authority by the council to consult SALC, SALC, first of all, SALC has confirmed that the two matters that I was extremely concerned about, I was correct in that we didn't have proper terms and conditions for the working group, and therefore, you know, I hesitate to use combative language, but we, in that case, did not have what SALC considered to be terms and conditions. Now, I'm quite happy to move on, but it is very clear, and people will have read that the terms and conditions were not in place under our standing orders 31A. And the other item that was, shall we say, unfortunate was that we were told that we couldn't have recorded votes. And of course, if you look at Standing Order 32, we are allowed to have recorded votes. So it was a very unfortunate working group situation. And I think what we need to take out of that is that in future, we need properly constituted working groups with terms of reference pursuant to Standing Order 31. And so that's probably the extent of what I need to say at the moment, although I'm happy to respond. But I'd like to thank Sal for confirming my view that that wasn't properly constituted. In fact, it was Nell who confirmed that in the end.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that I think, although NELC have confirmed that they would expect to see stronger terms of reference, I would have expected people to be involved in that meeting, who were in that meeting, regardless of who was the chair or any terms of reference for that committee. I would wonder what their SALC's opinion would be on councillors voting and speaking for other councillors who were present at the meeting. I think there was a lot of things wrong with that meeting, and the terms of reference were not anything that were wrong with that meeting. That's all I have to say on the matter.
Can I respond then?
Councillor Hood, can I wait for other councillors and then you can respond? Otherwise, it'll go backwards and forwards, and we should really only speak once on any of these discussions. Any other councillor wish to speak? Okay. Town Council Manager.
Just in response to Councillor Hood, I did further seek further guidance from SALC as to whether or not, as Councillor Hood asserted, that the guidance from them suggested that the meeting was not properly constituted, and therefore the decisions and recommendations were therefore invalid. And I had confirmation from SALC that while it is clear that Newmarket Town Council standing orders require terms of reference for working groups, this is to an extent formalising what are normally more of an ad hoc, informal way of working on business. And it also said that it would not invalidate the decisions to commission the review or subsequently accept its recommendations. And to his knowledge, there is no legislation or references in legal text or guidance that require working groups to have formal terms of reference. And so effectively what that has done is to confirm that working groups are more of an ad hoc, informal way for councillors to look at specific issues, and there is no legal requirement for them to have terms of reference. The more terms of reference they have, the more like a committee they become, and the less they serve the purpose for which they are intended.
Thank you, Deborah. I'll go back to Councillor Hood now. And then we'll perhaps wrap up this debate. Councillor Hood.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if Ian Young is still here, but he was, of course, mistaken when he thought that I was the chair. It wasn't a question of me being the chair. It was a question of our chair, who had actually been Andy Drummond for the F&P meeting. I mean, I'm interested to hear, Deborah, what you've said. It would have perhaps been helpful if you had communicated that to me before, because I'm looking very clearly at the information where now say that if it was a new working group or there were no terms of reference, then they would expect there to be more than the terms of reference that we had. So I'm very happy not to prolong this. I certainly would take issue with what's just been said. And I think what we need to do is to learn from this and make sure that we have proper terms of reference pursuant to Standing Order 31, which says very clearly we need them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Town Council Manager, and then I want to wrap up this debate.
Just very quickly to come back to Councillor Hood, I did share that with all councillors. I sent it out last Thursday afternoon. Copy to all councillors.
Okay, I don't think there are any resolutions associated with this debate. So I intend at this point to move forward to item 12, speed indicator device. Kathy, are you speaking on this? And I have something to say when we're finished.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had time or a response back from, I think, was it 2 weeks ago or just last week?
Yes, it's probably only 2 weeks, but
yeah, so I would like to ask if we could defer that report to the next full town council on the 29th.
Yeah, that's fine. And my word is, I have checked in Elizabeth Avenue and the post is there. It just requires a speed indicator device.
Lovely.
It's only like a year after we started off on it. So yeah, anyone else wish to speak on speed indicator devices? No, so that will be an agenda item for the 29th of June. So moving to item 13, and we have a reopening plan in our pack, which was pages 53 to 57 of the pack. And we've had some documents this evening, which I hope you've been able to access. And Town Council Manager, would you like to speak to this?
Actually, I'm going to invite the event manager to speak to this because it's her work.
Hello, Christy.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Hello, nice to be here. Yes, so the couple of the past week we've been working very intensely on the reopening plan, and by making a search online with what other councils are doing, most of the councils are reopening today. There are a few that are still closed, and there's 1 or 2 that have already opened from the 1st of June. So it means that whenever date we decide from today, we are within the government guidelines to reopen our office and our venue, given that we have taken all the necessary measures. We have sent you the risk assessment, which I'm very happy to inform you that I have sent it to Ellis Whittam, and it's been signed off by a health and safety consultant, and he's very happy with the information that we have provided. And now our task for the next week or so is to implement what we have outlined on the risk assessment for the venue. This is just recommended dates, right? It's not, as I told you, whenever we feel that we are ready to open, taking all the safety measurements, then we are gonna open our venue. So the recommended dates are for the office, the 29th of July.
June, sorry, that's a mistake.
I'm sorry, yeah, it's my mistake on the report is June, I'm sorry, it's 29th of June, I'm sorry. The Memorial Hall and the Sports Pavilion for the public and for paid bookings on Monday, 6th of July. And the Memorial Gardens as well on the 6th of July. The Memorial Gardens is a big discussion whether we can open it or not, because according to the government guidelines, all playgrounds should remain closed. And as far as we can see in the gardens, it can be considered as a playground area rather than an open space. So there might be an argument that to remain the Memorial Gardens closed on that basis. It's a discussion to be made, and also there is a couple of changes that I would like to implement on the toilets. The toilet is a very sensitive subject and has been a puzzle for every public toilet and for every council. So there are some, I have emailed the safety consultant from Ellis Whittam asking for additional advice on the public toilets. We are considering at the moment keeping only one booth or one cubicle open and make it like 1 person per time for the public toilet. And the same will apply in our toilets in the building. So I think in a nutshell, that is for me for the reopening.
Thank you very much, Christy. I have a question.
Yes.
When do you think that councillors will be able to meet in the Memorial Hall? If not in the council chamber, then in the hall itself. Have you considered that?
Yes. Yes, I did. The thing is, of course, all the council meetings will take place in the main hall, which can comfortably accommodate 16 councillors plus council officers plus few visitors. The question is for the public, how we are going to manage the public. My idea, if you're willing to return the council meetings back to the venue, is to set chairs every 2 meters. And we're going to have a specific number of chairs in the main hall for the public. And we're going to ask the public to reserve a seat in advance, similar the way that we are doing with the Zoom link. And we're going to invite the public members to reserve a seat in advance. This is kind of the way, because this is the problem with the council meetings, how we're going to manage the public, not the councillors being in the building.
Okay, well, as far as I can tell in your report, you actually haven't put a date on that. So are we, Town Council Manager?
We're taking the guidance from SALC on when it is appropriate for us to consider having meetings in the normal manner. The main consideration is, as Christy says, is the members of the public being able to attend. At the moment, SALC's guidance, it's emblazoned across the front of their home pages that it's still not appropriate. The current government restrictions don't allow us to meet in person, even with social distancing arrangements. So we await the guidance from SALC on when it might be appropriate to consider meeting in person again. And we'll keep the council updated as soon as the guidance changes. But for now, that's what we're being told.
Okay. Thank you. So that's a few. Any other councillors have questions?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Holbert's just wanting to speak. Sorry.
Holbert, then Councillor.
The other thing I was thinking of is it also something for guidance that even the MPs at the Houses of Parliament, when they are allowed to all attend, I would take it then that we will be able to attend our meetings in the normal way if government allows the MPs all to meet. Therefore, we could take guidance from that, couldn't we?
Potentially, but I think we would be ill-advised not to follow the guidance from the SALC, because that's coming through from the National Association, who's working very closely with all the relevant authorities, and we need to be showing being an exemplar of how we should be handling these matters.
I get on that situation. Obviously, they're having a meeting the same as us. But that's my point of view.
Okay, thank you,
Councillor
Yarrow. Given that the dates are recommended opening dates, I'm concerned that flexibility will still be applied, in particular, of course, the Memorial Gardens and the children's play areas. Is that the case, that it will be reviewed constantly?
Constantly, that's the advice from the safety officer as well. That not apply only for the gardens, for the venue as well, and for the officer as well. Because if we have a spike, then everything's going to change again. So my task from now on, as soon as we establish the reopening, is to check daily, as they are doing, because they are doing exactly the same thing, on the guidelines and how things are progressing with the virus and where we stand. The opening of the venue is very straightforward. Even the public toilets can be managed. My big question at the moment is the gardens, because the area is mostly a playground area. It's not open space like the several. So my main question, should we open the gardens or not? And also we have a business van. Sorry, go on, I'm sorry.
You wanted to speak?
I was just going to say, I don't really see a rush why we should rush to go back to physical meetings, because this seems to work so well and actually seems to allow meetings to be much more accessible for the public. On the gardens, I'm really hesitant to support reopening that anytime soon, because as Christy just mentioned, a second spike and we are still. I think we've got the second worst death rate in the world for COVID-19, and I think I just don't see the rush to reopen the memorial gardens either, unless there's a really stringent, preventative for people, making sure people keep their distance, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Anyone else? Councillor Drummond and then Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think with respect to the gardens reopening, this isn't really something we can decide. I think the government legislation is clear that playgrounds shouldn't open, and at the end of the day, our memorial gardens are a playground, and it'd be very, very difficult for us to police the use of the play equipment. And with respect to the public toilets are really only there for the users of the play area. The town council isn't really responsible for public toilets. That's a district function, and we do have district public toilets in town. So I don't think you should even put that to the vote, because if we vote to open it, I think it would be illegal.
Thank you, Councillor Drummond. Councillor Fitzgerald.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Regarding memorial gardens, we need to remember also that it's not only the community in Newmarket go there with families and children, it also attracts families and children from other towns as well, from Bottisham and from Load. We have to remember that there are going to be very large crowds there once it's open. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Councillor Fitzgerald. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Lay, and then the Town Council Manager.
You're muted, James.
Now can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fine. I agree with the last two speakers. I think we should keep the gardens closed for the time being and see what government says eventually about reopening them, because when they were open and we had good weather, we were overwhelmed by people using the park, and there was no way that we could have controlled it. So I'm afraid I vote for keeping those gardens closed and for keeping the toilets closed.
Thank you. Town Council Manager.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the report isn't as obviously recommended dates, but we've also specified that, you know, if we're not going to open the toilets, we would be useful perhaps to have a date to review when the memorial gardens should be open. Obviously, government guidance is changing on a regular basis, but with full council now after the next meeting, probably only meeting monthly, perhaps we could sort of look to agree that there would be reviewed by the relevant committee and then referred to full council. But I would also just ask councillors to think about whether or not it's appropriate for us to consider taking paid bookings for both the hall and the sports pavilion. Well, what the view is on that.
I'm tempted to deal with things one at a time, and Councillor Drummond has spoken strongly about not opening the gardens or the toilets. Would you like to make a proposal to that effect, Councillor Drummond?
Well, as I said, I will if you insist, but personally I feel that we'd be acting in the law by just not putting it to the vote in case the vote fails, because I think the law is quite clear that...
I'd rather have a consensus on this.
I'll propose that we not open the gardens because of the play area. Thank you.
Okay.
And sorry, can I just add in about reviewing it perhaps at a...
Well, I was going to come to that because there's
Right.
the other pages anyway. I just want to get one thing out of the way. Anyone else wish to speak on this? All those in favour of keeping the gardens closed?
Yeah.
Does that include the toilets?
And including the toilets?
May I add something?
Yes, Councillor Fitzgerald.
I vote in favour of it's been closed. However, once it's open, the toilet should open as well. I've spoken to many mothers before the COVID-19 that how disappointed that they were because the toilets were shut, and very difficult for them to spend long period of time not being able to use the toilets for themselves and for the children, and also for babies as well. So I vote for it's being shut, but as it opens, toilets being open as well at the same time.
Okay, the proposal is for the Memorial Gardens and the toilets to remain closed. Can we have that vote again? Slightly interrupted. All those in favour of closing it, or keeping it closed, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
And anyone against?
Yes, I think that's unanimous.
Unanimous, thank you.
If it's okay with you, I'll say until government guidance has changed.
Yes, thank you, that sounds fine. So shall we now take it bit by bit? The Town Council office, the proposal is that that opens on Monday the 29th of June. Any discussion on that?
We are taking all the measures.
Just if you just give us a moment, Councillor Holbert. I think Christy was going to just speak on that.
About the opening of the office, we are taking all the measurements according to the risk assessment. We are arranging a deep cleaning in the hall. We have arranged a daily cleaning as well after the 29th of June. We are going to put tapes. We're going to establish one flow system in the building. So I think we have covered anything that needs to be covered in order to make our return to the office as safe as possible. When it comes to if we're going to accept paid bookings in the venue, all the safety measurements that we have taken will apply for the public as well, coming to the venue. And also by reducing the capacity of the higher meeting rooms to 50%, this will help to maintain the social distancing, the necessary social distancing, and to follow the government guidelines. For that reasons, my recommendation, I think that we can open the venue in a safe manner for the staff and for the public as well.
Okay, as I say, I'd like to take this bit by bit. So let's consider the Town Council office. The proposal is to open on Monday the 29th of June. Does anyone want to speak on this?
Can I just clarify? Sorry, it's not particularly clear in the report, but the idea is that from the 29th of June, we will have 3 staff working back in the office. And the proposal is that from the 4th of July, the office would be open to the public. That will give staff an opportunity to get used to the new protocols that they've got to work in the building under before we start to allow members of the public to enter the building. So would the 4th of July is the recommended date for being open to the public?
Yeah.
And also at the moment the suggestion is that we would be the building would be available for bookings from that date, but that's a separate.
We'll deal with that separately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any councillors wish to speak on this? Otherwise, we'll just put it straight to a vote. Okay, I will propose then that we do open the Town Council office on Monday the 29th of June and open to the public for inquiries from the 4th of July. Is that seconded?
4th of July Saturday, 4th of July Saturday, 6th of July.
6th of July.
Sorry. Yes. Monday the 6th of July.
4th of July is a Saturday.
Yeah, it's a mistake in the report. It should be the 6th.
Councillor Stevens, did I see you seconding that proposal?
Yes, yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favour, please.
Okay.
Okay, and those against? That's carried.
Can you clarify the dates, please? 29th
Yes.
for the office
For the
and
office, and
6th of July.
Inquiries from the public.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so now we move to the last part, which is the Memorial Hall and Sports Pavilion for public and paid bookings. Town Council Manager, you felt strongly that we shouldn't be doing this. Is that correct?
I think we need to balance it against the risk assessment and the government guidance, and I just think we need to be very careful about, you know, if we as a council aren't able to meet, we just need to be very careful to make sure that is it appropriate? I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
I actually, I would wonder if we allowed an event to go on our premises and the amount of people let in or social distancing wasn't applied and something happened, who would be liable for that? And it could well be us. I would propose that we do not have public events. We've, at our finance policy working group meeting, the aforementioned, we did discuss the financial implications, and we're okay. We're okay. We've budgeted to include those, to not having events. So I don't think we need to be in any hurry whatsoever
Councillor Yarrow?
to do those.
Yeah, I'm just reading the risk assessment, and I think Councillor O'Neill has articulated the feeling really. There's no way, like children in the memorial gardens, we can't control them. And if there's somebody has rented, for example, on the Severals and they're having a party, there's no way we can control them either. And so we can't actually meet the requirements of the risk assessment, in my view, if we rent somewhere out like that.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
The risk assessment that you just saw, it's just for the venue, it's not for the gardens. For the gardens, we have prepared a different risk assessment.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, this is just for the venue.
Yes, yeah.
But that's what we're talking about, Christy. We're only talking about the venues now.
Yeah, you're
talking, I'm just looking at the venues.
Yeah.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I was going to make a proposal, that's all.
Yes, please.
I was going to propose that we continue to listen for advice, but currently we do not hire out the venues.
Should we put in this proposal when we're going to review these and say at the next every town council meeting we will review?
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
It needs to be a fluid situation and review it at the next full council meeting.
The proposal is that we do not open the Memorial Hall and Sports Pavilion for public and paid bookings, but we will review it on the 29th of June and agree a date when we will review it in the future. This has got to be a rolling programme. Is that seconded? That's seconded by Councillor Diaz. Does anyone else wish to speak? All those in favour of that proposal, please.
Okay.
Okay, and that's carried. Anyone against? Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 14 on the agenda, which is the Memorial Gardens, and to receive an update, first of all, about the kiosk. Kathy.
Yeah, so again, there hasn't been enough time to get any further with this, although I have lodged a report with West Suffolk Council, with the Food and Safety Department, but they've told me that they were all busy opening up the high street this morning and inspecting it. So they've been working on that, and they're going to get back to me at some point this week.
Okay.
Recommendations would be.
Thank you. And then we go to the aerial runway, of which we have a costings for a launch pad. I'll be interested to hear what councillors' views are of this. I certainly have views of my own. Jane, Councillor Lay, you need to unmute.
Right, now can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Right. I've had a look at this, and I think the £4,000 is an enormous sum for something that could be built locally for £1,000 and installed. So, you know, there are
a proposal, Councillor Lake.
There is a proposal that we build this locally and install it locally for about £1,000.
Yes, that was exactly my thoughts. Any other thoughts? I mean, it just seemed crazy, £4,500 for a platform. Kathy?
I understand. I see what you're saying. It is an enormous amount of money. However, I am just a bit concerned. Built locally by, I think with it being a piece of play equipment, I think it has to be done by relevant people, not just somebody who's building something like it. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts would be on that. It's got to be fit for purpose, hasn't it, completely? And
okay, well, Councillor Caesar, and then we'll come back to Councillor Lay as the proposer.
Yeah, I understand what Kathy's saying about it needing to be sort of safe, but that platform doesn't look terribly safe in itself. That's not a platform that I've seen as a launchpad used before. It's got, most launchpads have some sort of railing device, and that just seems to be a non-slip ramp with some non-slip pieces stuck to it, and you know, they could at least I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well just build up the earth and put some MDF down with some non-slip surfacing, which yes wouldn't cost £1,000. And if we're going to spend £1,000, we might as well spend £1,000 on having someone safety test a ramp that we've built for £50. So I do think that's a lot of money for that.
Councillor Lay, did you want to come back? I can't see how.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. I think Sarah speaks an awful lot of common sense. And, you know, had we gone to Anglia Fabrication, one of our local companies who build all sorts of things for most of the equine industry within Newmarket, we would get something made for 25% of the cost we intended to spend.
Councillor Drummond.
Yeah, my initial thought was, wow, that's expensive. Are we paying for a runway here? But I think you'll find that all play equipment is expensive because it has been well thought out. I think the picture's not good. It looks like there are a number of supports there. And these things are made very well because the kids are going to try and wreck them. And I think what you have to look at is, if you think that will be wrecked, don't buy it. If you feel it's strong enough for the job, unfortunately, that is the case, that play equipment is very, very expensive.
I think, first of all, that the Memorial Gardens we're not opening in the near future. So we do have a bit of time on our hands to get this right. And I'm personally, I think it should be a wooden platform to match the castle and the other wooden features in the playground. And I can't see that £4,500. Councillor O'Neill. Unmute.
Muted. Not before time. I would think Anglia Fabrications would make it out of metal, and I don't think that would be right. I think it needs to be made out of wood. If we have got time, it would be a good idea to get some quotes, to approach different companies. I would think would be the most sensible thing, because we do need it to be secure. We would want to have guarantees around its use as well, so that if it is damaged, we can have it repaired, because Councillor Drummond's entirely correct on that it needs to be built to last, and we should just get some quotes.
Council Manager.
I would just make the point that it would probably be worth getting alternative quotes from other play supply companies, because
exactly.
the equipment does have to comply with the British standards, and you know, there's no point in spending £1,000 on something that once it's installed, that it's failed by the when we have the post inspection completed. So
okay, we're going to take a proposal from Councillor O'Neill that we seek further quotes, and Councillor Drummond, yes.
I think they still make play equipment. You know, the Wicksteed Park, I think they have like an offshoot, don't they? That would probably be as good as anybody to get a competitive quote from.
Okay, so a proposal from Councillor O'Neill to get further quotes on the ramp. Is that seconded? Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All those in favour, please show now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Is that right, Kathy?
That's great, yeah.
Okay, we move on to the skate park, and there is a letter from Will Wright about the skate park. I'd like to thank Councillor Hood for her involvement over the last 2 years in supporting this project. As you probably aware, the young people raised £150,000 and they got that funds. They're now looking to raise another £30,000, I think it is, for lighting and CCTV. They think that this is very important, and I think that's probably concurs with the thoughts of councillors. They are short of that, I think, by about £13,000. And I'd like to propose from the chair that we make a grant of £5,000 to help pay for the lighting and CCTV at the new skate park.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Any further questions about that or comments? In that case, I put that proposal to the council that we grant £5,000 for the skate park for lighting and CCTV. All those in favour?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and that is carried. Thank you very much. Anyone against? No. Item 16, the West Suffolk Service Level Agreement to receive an update on the planters in the High Street. There was something else we were going to raise under this.
Yeah.
Oh, the bank.
The bank at the Queen's
Talk
Statue.
about that first, Councillor Hood.
Yes, okay. Am I unmuted? Yeah. I just happened to drive by it and it doesn't look as if it's been mown, and I mean, I'm all for leaving things to nature, but that bank does need to be properly taken care of. I don't know why it isn't. So we do need to get whoever's supposed to be mowing it to mow it and look after it properly.
This is in effect things that need to go back to West Suffolk that we don't feel they're meeting the service level agreement. Councillor Lay.
Yeah, Philippa Winter told me that the original agreement with that bank was that the man who looks after the cemetery would come across and water that bank, which kept it nice and moist and in very reasonable condition. I don't know who the man from the cemetery is, so I can't lead you in that direction, but somebody must know.
Okay. Yeah, Town Council Manager.
I have been trying to deal with this. It's a little challenging from out of town, but I had spoken to Mr. John Van Reed Toas about whether that should be cut. He said that if it wasn't being cut, then he would go and he was going to have a look at it the next day and get it cut if it needed to be. So I had was working on the assumption that that had been completed, and I had also arranged for our town keeper to water that on a regular basis, but obviously by the time it was brought to our attention it was probably a little bit too late for it to perhaps revive the grass, but it's something that will have to continue to be monitored. But I can certainly raise that again and find out what's happening. I would also I think we also just need to bear in mind that under the circumstances, I do know that they're really struggling with team members of keeping up with the workload. They've got, their own staff members who are shielding or self-isolating because they're showing symptoms, and they are sort of trying to do their best to sort of keep up with the workload. But I think there are occasions when they're struggling.
I think we have to keep reminding them that we are looking, and I'm afraid I'm going to add to the list, because the two roundabouts at Tesco's are looking very shabby, and they certainly need attention. So what about the planters? Have we got any?
Well, they should have been, they should be being planted up over the next 2 or 3 days. Okay. They were going to, the plants were being delivered to their depot this morning, first thing, and they were going to try and get them, all the planters and areas that need to be planted up, done over sort of today, tomorrow, and possibly into Wednesday. But they were going to try and get as many staff on that task as possible so they could get it done quickly. And then they were going to be watering it daily until things were sort of settled in, and then it would be 3 times a week.
Okay. Any further comments from councillors? I just think we have to keep reminding them and understanding the difficulties, but in the end, we want Newmarket to look good even in difficult circumstances. And this may be something that it's useful for councillors to go around and perhaps help say where the deficiencies lie. That would be something that we can all do. Any further comment? I don't think there's any resolution needed on that. Okay, moving forward onto the Guineas to discuss issues with social distancing measures. We have had a letter from Ross McKitterick, the centre manager. Should I read that out?
Councillor Holbert asked for this item to be on the agenda, so I just wonder whether it would be appropriate to allow him to speak first.
Yes, Councillor Holbert.
Okay. Good evening, everybody on this. Yes, the Guinness, probably, as you know, the Guinness situation is, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
That's fine, Peter.
Okay. You can only come into the Guinness it's coming from where the bus station is. They will not allow you to come back, which is causing an awful lot of problems by just having one way into the Guinness. Because the simple reason is that it's very hard for people that are coming up from, let's say, from the Market Square car park, because you cannot get into the doctors from there. You've got to go right the way round the top to come back down to the doctors. But then if you want to go for a prescription, you can't go back up the Guinness to go to the chemist. You're not allowed. The other problem we've got with it is that the doors that are halfway down the Guinness, where you've got them on the right and the left, those doors have been locked. Now that, to me, is completely wrong, because those doors have near enough been open now for 30 years. So therefore, public think that this is a right of way, so therefore they should not have those doors locked. Because a lot of people that come into the town come in by taxi, or they come in by the dial-a-ride buses, and this is where they get out. But they can't do that now because the doors are locked. The other thing is, people go to the banks and other places along the high street where you've got a back entrance. They can't get there because the door, as you go down on the left, is locked. The other thing that does also concern me, that if there was a fire in the Guinness or an incident, you've got no quick way of getting out. I suggested that what they do there is to put either tape or barriers down the middle, so therefore you go in on the left-hand side and come back on the right. Also, I've had words with a lot of the retailers down there, and they said that since these things have been done, they are losing customers, because the customers they cannot come up to them anyway, because you're not allowed. I think that this is entirely incorrect. I mean, I won't go on about the other things. There's problems with what they want to do with the high street, making it one way. Again, this is causing problems, because if you're going down Market Street, you can only turn left. You can't turn right. So if you want to go down to the chemist like Boots, the only way you've got to go in, you've got to go down to Wellington Street and come up that way. But what a lot of people do, which I think is a health and safety matter, is they see where the shop they want. What you've got to do is, doing it correctly, you've got to walk up to the clock tower, cross the road up there, then come back. But a lot of people say, I'm not doing that. They go straight across the high road. All I would like is something to be done to make it easier, especially in the rookery. That is wrong. If anybody wants to ask questions, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you.
I can concur with some of those thoughts, because on the helpline this afternoon, someone phoned up saying that they'd had difficulty because of the distances they found that they had to walk, and they had some unhealthy disabilities. Councillor O'Neill, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I went down on the first day of these measures put in place and tried to go to the Rookery Medical Centre to pick up a prescription. And I walked all the way around and then got to the barrier just outside it and was told I couldn't go through. So then I had to walk round. And I tried to understand why those measures, why the barrier was there. And they said they needed 8 meters. However, I didn't think they'd got their maths correct in that, because people could be queuing at either side, but they wouldn't be queuing 2 meters away from the sides of the shop. They would be against it. I also failed to see if there would be queues outside the 2 shops at that point, because one of them being the O2 shop, I don't think I've ever seen large numbers of people in that shop at any time. So there wouldn't be people queuing there. The main problem is because I couldn't go to the Rookery Medical Centre there, if that was the case, because it wasn't signposted that I couldn't get in there as well, I wasted my journey and walked past 20 people to go in there, only to be told I couldn't enter at that point. So then I walked past another 40 people to try and go round to go in the main doors, and then walked past lots of people. If there were people queuing there, I'd be walking past probably 100 people. So that doesn't really seem to be doing much for my health. And also having a one-way system with an entry, the automatic doors at the far end of the Guineas, if you go in there and just went to Lord's, it'd be far easier if you used common sense and were allowed to use common sense and think, oh, there's nobody coming, I'll exit out of those doors, rather than walk all the way down, passing as many people as I possibly can. It just doesn't seem like anyone's applied common sense to it. I know, I understand the problems.
Right, Councillor Neil.
I understand the problems, because it's a fluid situation, and you've got to put in measures and think of what's going to happen. And there is the problem of people who have disabilities and are physically impaired, having to make longer journeys round. It just seems that much better things could be implemented.
Well,
thank you, Councillor Diaz now. Councillor Albert, it's Councillor Diaz.
Sorry, Councillor, Mr. Mayor. The other thing is, which was a terrible thing, I had one of my constituencies, he's like me, he's blind, he's not quite as bad as me, but he went into Superdrug to get a prescription, and when he came out, now the entrance to Superdrug is 3 yards from the entrance of those big doors, by the bus station. And when he came out, he's got his white stick. He says, "Oh, okay." He said, "No, you can't go out that way. You're going the wrong way." He had to go round near enough 250 yards to come out to the bus. They wouldn't let him come out, and he had a white stick. And if I'd have been there, I would have taken him myself. I would tell them to let him go through. No way. They say, to me, as Councillor Neil said, there is no logic in it. The easiest way is they put the barriers down the middle to make it left and right. Go down the left and back up the right.
We've spoken on this. Please, can we have Councillor Diaz?
Thank you. I do agree with what's been said. I do think it's a fire hazard having both those side doors closed. I believe that they're discriminating against the less able-bodied and the elderly. They're treating the public as idiots, frankly. Why can't they put walkways across at various points in the Guineas, one-way walkways, so that you can at least cross part way down that walkway? And frankly, I just think common sense has left that building. That's all I wanted to say.
Anyone else wish to speak? I think, to be fair to Councillor Caesar.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I agree with all those. It's madness forcing people who are already vulnerable to spend more time out of their house than they would choose to do so because you've invented some maze for them is just insane. And what makes it worse is, of course, charging parking at the same time. If someone's just popped to their doctors wanting to get a quick prescription, they just want to go to the doctor's, the chemist, and then get out of there, and they can't. They're walking around for half an hour, and they're being charged for parking for it, and that's insane.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
No, you've spoken. We must move on. I will do want to
just say one more thing.
I think
more thing.
the Mayor is trying to move on, Councillor.
All right, sorry. But,
I do think I ought to read out the centre manager's statement, and then we'll decide what we're going to do. Unfortunately, I'll not be in a position to attend the meeting later this evening. The Guinness Shopping Centre has introduced the one-way walking system in line with government guidance on social distancing. Whilst we understand the frustrations and difficulties that this is causing, we deliberated long and hard about these measures prior to instigation and felt this was the only way to A, maintain social distancing, B, ensure we do not exceed the maximum permitted capacity, and C, do everything we can to ensure we are contributing to the national effort to lower the R rate and beat the coronavirus. The measures we have put in place are subject
This is from the centre manager.
as and when we find a new, better process that meets the government criteria, or indeed if the government criteria changes. I would ask that you forward the minutes of the meeting and any constructive suggestions through to me for consideration. So clearly he will be getting a little epistle from the Town Council. I don't want to go on too long about this. I think there's some very constructive suggestions. Does anyone feel that they can add to what we've already said?
Well, the only thing I said is, on this thing is, that whoever designed that, if you have brains, well, I'll tell you what, it'd be dangerous. Because if you go down Sun Lane's 12 foot wide, you've got two-way traffic. Work that one out. And also you've got the bikes coming up. You know, it seems to me, whoever has done that, well, you've heard what I've said. I think something should be done near enough immediately to sort that out. I don't care what the government says. They're not in Newmarket. We are. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill, and then we're going to wind this up.
So mine's just a quick point in that I think maybe it's been misinterpreted, the advice from the government, because even the police will tell you not to step out into the road if you're passing somebody when you're walking along. They're saying that there's no risk of contact then when you're walking past people. And when you're walking past a queue, there isn't a problem as long as you walk past them. And I think they could just do something. That was my only point. I think they've just got confused thinking people are queuing and they have to have a 2 metre gap from queues, because you don't.
Okay, thank you. We've obviously got the suggestions from all councillors minuted, and we can pass those through to the centre manager of the Guinness. Do you think we need to have a vote that we are disappointed with the arrangements or something along those lines?
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Holbert, is that strong enough for you?
Yes, well, I would like it. You know, I mean, he was the one, which I understand, he instigated it, but he doesn't seem to be listening or anything. Because
can I have a proposal, Councillor Holbert?
I think I would like to see something a bit stronger towards him. He's not disabled like a lot of people coming to Newmarket are. And I tell you what, you're going to have a lot of problems with people there, because I know on the last Sunday, they said to him, you can't come up that way. And a lot of people said, up yours, we're going, and they did. And you're going to have a lot of problems.
Right, I need a proposal from someone. Can someone give me a proposal? That, the town council, Councillor.
Can I carry on? Okay, I would like a proposal that a strong letter or anything be sent to the person that instigated this. I'll take it if it was Ross, whoever it is, and said that you are causing a lot of unsatisfaction in Newmarket, especially not with only customers, but also retailers. The retailers are losing business on this because people will not now go into the Guinness.
So to summarise, Councillor Holbert, you're making a proposal that we write to the management, to Guinness management,
Yes.
Expressing the council's dissatisfaction with their current arrangements, which is impacting on customers and retailers.
Yes.
Thank you.
And also people of a disability, like myself and other people. I mean, when you've got to, obviously, you just can't see it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holbert. I think the Mayor would like to take a vote.
So Neil,
Seconding.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, all those in favour of sending that letter, and indeed the minutes and suggestions that have come from...
Yes, I am.
All those in favour?
Yes.
Me, I do.
And those against? Well, there's quite a few abstentions there, I think. Do you want to show your abstentions? One abstention, actually. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Peter.
Councillor Drummond.
We're going to move on to item 18, car parking, to receive an update on the reintroduction of car parking charges. Who wishes to speak on this? Councillor Appleby, do you want to speak?
Can I speak, please?
Yes, Councillor Bowen. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
The car parking charges, I mean, as was said earlier, I just don't feel like it's been very well publicised, and the timing is just awful. I'm dumbfounded as to why charges are being reintroduced. I know what the reason is, that we need more funding for the upkeep of the car parks. But does West Suffolk Council not have reserves that they can dip into? I mean, I just feel that a lot of people are still not back at work yet, and so I don't see what's changed really. And a few people are back at work, but not the majority, I don't think.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Anyone else wish to say anything, or indeed make a proposal? Councillor Caesar.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do feel like I should echo Douglas's words, but only because I agree with them, not because it's Douglas. People aren't back at work. We made a big thing about advertising the fact that we weren't finding people for parking, and no comment at all about the fact we were bringing back those charges. So, a lot of people have been parking in places where it's not terribly legal on single yellow and things, and we should have given fair warning. It's somewhat entrapment. So I do think we should sort of relax the parking issues, or at least change the times, because people are going to be still off work for a long time. And bringing back car parking in the charges in the car parks themselves, when we're still having a one-way system, does feel like we are charging people more than they really should be paying, because it's, if shopping is going to take you far longer because you're both having to queue and you're having to negotiate this one-way system that you probably aren't familiar with, and it's going to take you twice as long. That just seems like a cruel money spinner, really. It doesn't seem fair at all.
Okay. Councillor O'Neill.
I was just going to echo those thoughts, that I don't believe you can charge people at all for parking when I might say that shopping trip I'm going to undertake would take me an hour, so I pay for an hour in the car park. However, I'm in a queue outside a chemist's for 65 minutes, and I have queued in various shops to get items. I've queued for a prescription collection in the high street for 45 minutes. So I don't believe, when we're restricting the shops that are open and making people queue to go in, that you can introduce parking charges.
Can I have a resolution, please? I'm sorry, the member of public, I'm afraid you can't involve you at this point, as much as we'd like. But I would like a resolution from someone, otherwise the matter falls.
How about something like the reintroduction of parking charges we feel has been the way parking charges have been reintroduced has been short-sighted, and we feel that due to the ongoing pandemic and therefore queuing for amenities, we feel that this is the wrong decision, or something like that.
It's a start. Can we have that seconded? and then we'll proceed to making it better. Okay, seconded by Councillor Diaz and Councillor Caesar and Councillor Fitzgerald. Okay. Anyone
I
say
cannot possibly comment and will not vote.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
I was just going to,
please.
Yeah, I was just going to propose that Newmarket Town Council does not support the reintroduction of parking charges, and feel it will have a detrimental effect on the high street.
So we've got a sort of different resolution there, though perhaps a simpler one, Councillor Boney.
At this time.
Sorry?
At this time. It needs to be at this time.
I bet you can't repeat what you just said, Councillor O'Neill.
I propose that Newmarket Town Council does not support the reintroduction of parking charges at this time, whilst and it will have a detrimental effect on the high street.
Could we make it specific as to why we think that, you know, about the fact that people are queuing? And because I'm, you know, this might seem very obvious to us what they're doing here, but it may not have dawned on anyone at West Suffolk that you are effectively charging people to queue here and to do one-way systems that they've put in. So could we make that clear as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're adding that on. I don't know if Julie's feeling comfortable about what our resolution is.
No, not at all.
Hang on, just bear with me. I'm just scribbling.
Shall I make
Well, I've got what Chris said, and he
While we're
not
just
support.
thinking about this, I'm going to have to pause anyway, because I need to suspend standing orders. The meetings of the Town Council should only last 2 hours, and we're approaching that 2-hour mark. So just as an in-between, I think I can do that. I'd like to propose that we suspend standing orders so that we can continue our meeting after the 2 hours. Is that seconded by someone? Thank you, Councillor Caesar. All those in favour of suspending standing orders so that we can continue our meeting?
Yes.
And those against? Okay, the standing orders to be suspended at 8 o'clock so we can continue our meeting. Deborah, have you got some wording?
I'm getting there. Hang on, I'm nearly there. Link of shopping trips. Okay. So yeah, Newmarket Town Council does not support the reintroduction of car park charges at this time because it will have a detrimental effect on the high street, and because social distancing measures and queues are impacting on the length of time and the length of shopping trips, which is having a broader impact on car park times, parking times.
Okay, is everyone clear about that? Councillor Drummond.
Yeah, like Councillor Appleby, I will be abstaining, but could I just point out, you seem to be breaking one of your long-standing rules about making a resolution on something that you don't actually have a report in the agenda pack about.
That's quite a strange interpretation. It is an agenda item, and that normally is sufficient. Not the report aspect, but that it must be an agenda item. So I'm sticking to that, and I feel that the council are quite keen to make a point about this. So have we had it seconded? I cannot remember. Yes, well, it's seconded now. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please show now. Those against, please show now. And those abstaining, please show now. And we have 3 abstentions on the screen and Councillor Appleby, I believe.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We now move to item 19 on the agenda, Suffolk Children's Centres. I believe that's Councillor Yarrow wishes to speak. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you. Now, I have presented arguments about the cuts to the children's centres in Suffolk before, and conscious of the time, I'll be brief and just endeavour to summarise. I'm drawing this to your attention because on Tuesday, the 14th July, Suffolk County Council, the responsible cabinet, is going to legislate and reduce the children's centres and close others in Suffolk. That's Tuesday, the 14th of July. Now, there are currently 38 children's centres in Suffolk, and they're proposing to cut or close 22 of them. 9 were closed earlier in 2015. Now, the children's centres are for families with children from birth to 5 years old, and there's an active team there of health visitors, family support practitioners, support information service. They operate child health clinics, midwifery, parenting support, advice, finance, training, employment, breastfeeding advice, and outreach. And what is going to happen now, apparently, is they're no longer going to be functioning for children from birth to and families from birth to 5 years old, but they're going to repurpose to involve up to 19-year-old young people. Now, these proposals rely very much on other sector organisations and nurseries. And as with the client families, they've been hit pretty hard by the pandemic, and they all face uncertain futures in this time of greater need. And it just seemed to me to be an oxymoron to actually go ahead with cuts at a time when the only thing that is certain is the uncertainty and the fact that these people are going to need more help. Now, as local councillors, we're here to represent the best interests of our residents, and I would like to propose a resolution when it's appropriate.
Can you do that now, please, Councillor Yarrow, and then we can move to the debate.
Right. So in the face of this crisis, I propose the following resolution. Newmarket Town Council is opposed to the planned cuts and closures to Suffolk Children's Centres. In particular, Newmarket Town Council is opposed to the proposed cuts to the Children's Centre in Foley House, Newmarket.
Thank you. Is that seconded? That's seconded by Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Diaz. Councillor Hood, do you wish to speak?
I certainly do. Am I unmuted? Okay, well, with the greatest of respect, Councillor Yarrow, he's utterly wrong in virtually everything he has said. And I'm happy to
You would say that, wouldn't you?
No, or you might say what you said, wouldn't you? But in any event,
chair, please?
Yes, so Suffolk County Council is reviewing its children's centres to update and improve the services, and a paper is coming to Suffolk County Council Cabinet next month, and there is a public question on it tomorrow. There will be no job losses, and money saved by reducing our spending on the buildings will be reinvested in spending on more staff to help our most disadvantaged residents. The plan is to develop children's centres in our towns into family hubs. And this is a policy which has been much promoted over the last few years by the Children's Commissioner for England, Anne Longfield. Children's centres focus on supporting children aged 0 to 5, yet we know that our families need help, advice, guidance and support for their childcare right through childhood. So we're developing part-time family hubs in more rural areas where children's centre staff will work part of the week from the children's centre building and the rest in outreach work in more isolated communities. And when our staff are not in the buildings, they will be used by partners in health and other services to work with families. In some cases where there's a shortage of nursery places, a children's centre will be repurposed into a nursery, and we're especially keen to see more places offered for disadvantaged 2-year-olds. The children's centre work will be continued as outreach. 2 of the 38 children's centres will be closed because they are located in unsuitable buildings. One only has an average 3 children a day attending, and the other has no disabled access upstairs and very limited parking. In both cases, outreach services will be developed so families get the help and support they need. The aim of the review is to get our help and support to hard to reach and disadvantaged families. We had a 12-week public consultation during which the majority of the 950 people who responded were in support. It has been pointed out that apparently no Labour councillor attended a meeting on all of this, and the whole point of this is to make sure that more children are reached and that children's centres reach children for a much longer time. So, Councillor Yarrow, I realise that, like all of us, you're very concerned about all of this, and I'd like to reassure you that instead of it being a disappointing outcome, that things will be very much improved. So sorry it's taken a long time, but I think it's very important that we get all the facts right. If we are going to vote, we need to vote with the facts at hand.
Well, I would argue with it. No, the premise of my sorry, Mayor.
No, we have other councillors speak, and then you sum up at the end.
Okay.
Would any other councillor like to speak? Okay. Then Councillor Yarrow will sum up, and then we'll go to a vote.
No,
okay?
I would like to speak, please.
Hold on. Well, Councillor O'Neill, and then Councillor Bowen.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor O'Neill.
I just wanted to say I would like to know more of the detail before voting, because I wouldn't like to vote on something when I hear two sides of an argument and I don't know the full extent of only hearing what Councillor Hood said now. I can't really vote on that because it's too late to hear that now. I'd like if we could defer it, but of course time doesn't allow that, does it?
Yes.
Well, I'm happy to provide paper.
Sorry, Councillor Hood, we can only speak once on this. Councillor Bowen.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but I would echo that, because what's been said, in my opinion, from Rachel Hood, has not been the entire truth. Because
oh, excuse me, a point of order.
No, you have the opportunity to speak now. No, you can't speak.
Bowen, address the chair.
So, you know, Councillor Hood missed out on the fact that a survey of 40 staff members, those are the people who run those centres and spend day in, day out working with parents who need those centres. A survey of 40 of the staff found that 4/5 of those surveys believed that the proposals being discussed would make things harder on families, particularly the vulnerable and the poor. Further to that, we conducted an online survey in Newmarket last year, and we had 306 residents sign a petition calling for a stop to the cuts because they believed that it would be detrimental to their families. That's 306 people in Newmarket, and that's of those who saw the petition. And I don't believe that the petition reached all of the people it needed to. So I think that this needs to be delayed as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Drummond.
Yes, Mayor, as you weren't going to let Councillor Hood elaborate on where that report that she gave came from, I also have a copy of it, and she read it verbatim, and it's from the portfolio holder on county, Councillor Mary Evans. So
yeah, I read it.
It's a factual report.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before Councillor Yarrow sums up, and then we go to a vote? Okay, Councillor Yarrow, would you like to sum up? Can I ask you to make it quite brief?
I shall, yeah. I hadn't covered all the details before because we have covered it quite extensively before, and we had the former Councillor Miller to come to address us when we're in full council. It seems to me the fundamental of his argument was that the staff in Newmarket and Foley House had the opportunity to work part-time. And also the expressed view is that £1 million is going to be saved from closing and cutting these centres. So I can't see £1 million being saved, that frankly we can improve our service. So I reiterate, I propose this resolution.
Could we have a named vote?
Sorry, Councillor Hood, you've spoken once.
I want a named vote, that's all.
Oh, okay.
No opposition, that's fine.
Can you repeat the proposition, please, Councillor Yarrow?
Yes.
So it's clear.
Yes.
Town Council Manager, can you prepare us for a named vote, please?
Yes.
Councillor Yarrow, please say what the resolution is again.
Newmarket Town Council is opposed to the planned cuts and closures to Suffolk's children's centres. In particular, Newmarket Town Council is opposed to the proposed cuts to the children's centre in Foley House, Newmarket.
Thank you. That has been seconded. How are you going to proceed with the name vote? Are you going to call councillors out?
Yes, I shall do that.
Okay, and you reply simply, Councillor Appleby?
Can I propose that this matter is deferred and that we consider more information?
You're moving an amendment, I suppose.
Yeah.
That it be deferred. Councillor Lay? Sorry, unmute.
I think Councillor Appleby is absolutely right. We've heard two sides of the story. They are so different that to vote on one or the other wouldn't be appropriate at this time. So I will second Councillor Appleby's amendment.
Okay. So we have an amendment which we must take first. Councillor Yarrow, you wish to speak?
Am I allowed to speak again?
Yes, you are, because you're now speaking to the amendment.
Well, I would propose, my concern is that we as councillors representing our local residents must be opposed in principle to our facility for young families being cut to half time, which is what is happening.
Well, I can probably speak again, can I?
You can, because you're speaking on the amendment.
Yes. Well, responding to the esteemed Councillor Yarrow, with respect, you are not, you don't have the facts at your fingertips, and I'd be very happy to provide them, but you're not.
I have read Mary Evans' report.
Please speak through the chair, not to each other.
Sorry.
So I'm pointing out that in my view, Councillor Yarrow doesn't have the facts at hand, and I'm happy to provide them if there is an adjournment, an amendment, whatever.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment?
Can I speak again on the amendment?
No one has asked for a name vote on the amendment, so I'm going to take the vote. All those in favour of deferring this to the next town council meeting, which is the 29th of June. Can I see your hands now for deferment?
Right.
Please count, town council manager.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
The amendment to the
7,
next
8,
town council meeting is what I'm going for.
yeah,
29th of June, yeah.
9, yeah, 1, 2.
Is there any, and can I see those against deferment? That's cleared. So the matter is deferred until the next full council meeting. And please, can we have a written report? I think that is important from perhaps both sides. And perhaps we do our own research as well. Thank you very much, Councillor Yarrow. Thank you, Councillor Hood. Moving on to item 20, ward reports. Do we have any ward reports? And I'm afraid I am going to ask that you make them brief. If you get long-winded, I'm going to cut you off. Councillor Lay.
Yes, very, very brief. I just want to say that I was not happy with the way in which West Suffolk Council dealt with the application of McDonald's, and on your behalf, I am pursuing the matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lay. Councillor Yarrow, did I see your hand up?
You did, yeah.
Brief, remember?
I had, these quite mundane matters in a way. I had concerns about the grass cutting, and through Town Council Manager, I've been pursuing that to Mr. Van Ries-Toes. We haven't had a reply. However, Friday 5th of May, somebody turned up to cut the grass. It's pouring rain, of course. But what I do need to know, and I still haven't heard from them, is the regular pattern, because the residents want to know when it's going to happen and on what basis and who the responsible party is. That was one point. Second point, Icewall Flats. Two residents came to me, the dog walkers, to complain that there were syringes and drug paraphernalia lying around the grounds of Icewall Flats. So I did go for a walk there myself. I didn't see any evidence at all. Of course, I didn't go into the building, but as they're dog walkers, I assume they wouldn't have done anyway. So I will follow that matter up.
Thank you very much,
information.
Councillor Drummond. Brief, remember?
Very brief. Can I just point out, I think we used to have an agenda items for the next agenda. And I wonder if, as by way of a ward report, I can ask that an item goes on next agenda. Because of CPE and the car parking permit schemes has come up. I've had quite a few emails about it. I noticed John Harvey is on on the call tonight. He's just stuck his thumbs up. He sent me an email today. I know that Councillor Hood has had a couple of emails, so I think it's something that we ought to look at and have an opinion on and feed that back to West Suffolk Council.
Is this residents parking?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll put that on the next agenda. Anyone else for a ward report? Councillor Bowen and then Councillor Fitzgerald. Brief.
The Black Lives Matter event on Sunday at the Severals was well attended, and we heard from several members of residents of Newmarket who had very educational and interesting stories to tell us about their experiences of racism within Newmarket. And yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bryan. That was very brief. Councillor Fitzgerald. Unmute. Unmute. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Mute.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The event was organised by the local community and families and children had attended. There were spontaneous speeches, including one from a 10-year-old, and very, very peaceful event, and show that our Newmarket community is.
Hello.
Hello?
No, it's all right. Keep talking.
Carry on.
It shows that our Newmarket community is culturally diverse and progressive. Social distancing was easily kept, and we heard several personal stories of discrimination based on skin color alone were shared, and everybody listened to whomever spoke at the event, and also held 8 minutes 46 seconds vigil for the murder of George Floyd. And lastly, Newmarket Journal reporter also attended.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give a few notes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fitzgerald. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hood.
Yes, just backing up the civil parking enforcement parking issues. I have, as Councillor Drummond said, received several emails, maybe 3 about it, and so I'm now in contact with the people at West Suffolk to attempt to move things forward. So I'll be able to report back next time. Plus, there is this issue of resurfacing our car parks, because I've always thought our car parks were an absolute disgrace, and West Suffolk have agreed to resurface and renovate them all. I don't see any reason why our car parks should be absolutely rubbish when Bury St Edmunds have got good ones. That's just part of it all, plus the residents parking and so on and so forth. So I'll report back.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hood. I'm hoping that's the last ward report. Thank you. We now go on to item 21, which is the meeting schedule, and you'll see that what we're proposing is to move towards the normal committee schedule, so that for the rest of this month we'll have, as planned, including a town council meeting on the Monday the 29th, but thereafter we start to move to something that has been discussed, and I agreed that we combine community and leisure, and we introduce a neighbourhood plan committee meeting. And that all fits into July and then follows through on a cycle. So we're moving back to committee meetings. So that's it's to consider. So any views on this, please? Councillor O'Neill.
I was just going to say, have we resolved to combine leisure services and community services? I wasn't sure if that had been.
If we accept this schedule, then
we do.
We're proposing it. That's the way I'm going to do it. Councillor Caesar.
Can we just confirm? I think we suggested that as a temporary measure whilst very little is going on, but I don't know if we actually resolved to merge them permanently.
Would you prepare to accept that we review this after 2 month cycle?
Yeah.
Councillor Diaz.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah. I think we need to sort of suck it and see, really, because both
If
those.
that sign is up like that,
Sorry?
does that mean they can't hear me?
We can hear you, Warwick. You're interrupting Councillor Diaz.
Both those meetings, as standalone meetings, do tend to run on quite significantly. And I think that combining them has the potential to make them incredibly long meetings. So on that note, I would say it needs to be reviewed without a doubt.
Thank you, Councillor Diaz. Can I suggest that we review it after the August, so we go through July and August? And I'd say, I do agree with you, because I don't like long meetings, and tonight for me has been a disaster. That's where I think working groups can come in. They can do task and finish with respect to many things related to community and leisure services.
We need, if I come in, we need to resolve the membership of both committees.
We do?
An item for next, or talk about next town council.
So we'll need to put out a form for people before the next council meeting, and I believe Councillor Drummond wanted to speak as well. Is that correct? No?
No, I did.
It was the town council manager. I saw something out the corner of my eye.
I'll just reiterate, I've said this on one or two occasions when the suggestion to combine the two committees has been raised, that one of the ways that we can sort of help to perhaps manage the workload of the combined committee would, in addition to sort of looking at working parties, would be to review the delegations to officers so that there's less work actually goes to the committee, because they've decided strategically how to handle matters, and then operationally the officers can just get on with it and perhaps just report back to the committees rather than having lengthy agendas.
Thank you. So the proposal is that we accept the cycle as in front of you, with the opportunity to review it at the August Town Council meeting. Okay, that's the proposal. Is that seconded? Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please show now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those against? And abstentions? Not that I could see. We're moving on to correspondence. We've had a Suffolk County Council newsletter, and we've had a PCSO report from Bradley Rackham. Any other correspondence?
None that hasn't already been circulated to councillors.
Okay. We now move to item 23. There are, I think, two matters that we very briefly discuss under human resources, but we do means that we have to exclude the press and public, and to resolve that under the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act, the public and press be excluded for the remainder of the meeting owing to the confidential matters to be discussed. So that needs to be seconded. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. All those in favour, please show now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those against? And thank you very much for attending, all members of the public, and indeed Alison. But unfortunately at this point, we need to exclude you.